Foundation for and Laboratory Medicine, APFCB, and supported by BD. First, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Shireen, and I'm from BD. I'll be your moderator for this webinar. Before kicking off the webinar, please allow me to review a few housekeeping rules for this session. This webinar will run for an approximately 1 hour. Certificate links will be emailed to you upon successful completion of the webinar and the quiz. The quiz will be launched at the end of the webinar, so please do look out for it. Throughout the webinar, you may ask questions via the Ask a Question chat box located at the left lower corner of your screen. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation, and questions that were not addressed will be compiled into an FAQ sheet that will be sent out to all participants. Should you have any questions after the webinar, please do email them to passea@bd.com. Without further delay, I am pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Constance Mack. Ms. Mack is an experienced registered nurse who graduated from the Nethersoul School of Nursing, Hong Kong, and went on to become a certified midwife in addition to receiving a certificate of nursing behavioral sciences. She completed her Bachelor of Health Sciences in Nursing at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University and has several qualifications, including the International Phlebotomy Technician under the American Society for Clinical Pathology, and is also a member of the Infusion Nursing Society of the USA. She's currently working as a project manager and research nurse at the Faculty of Medicine of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So without further delay, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Constance Mack, who will be speaking on the topic of phlebotomist attributes, knowledge, expectations, and professionalism. Ms. Constance.
Thank you. Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to be as one of the speakers in this APFCB webinar. The objective of this talk is not only provide detailed coverage, step-by-step instruction on best practice for phlebotomy process. It is not this session, but the upcoming 2 webinars. But I will focus more on an area which is usually overlooked by most of the training or the trainees. It's the attributes and professionalism of phlebotomists or any healthcare workers who is responsible for blood taking. I fully believe that the attributes and professionalism is as important as the best practice of phlebotomy service and the premium quality service. Perhaps you will wonder why phlebotomists need to concern about attributes and professionalism. Let us recall some of the our unfavorable experience when you yourself waiting for the blood collection. Do you feel nervous? Do you feel your heart beating? And especially very anxious when the phlebotomist is trying to manipulate your arm to and fro and then trying to identify your vein. And it seems that sometimes the pain seems like an eternity because the needle is going in but seems not reaching the blood vessels. And it's that kind of bad experience that led us very unhappy with the this invasive procedure, blood collection. Suppose I think most of the patients or even ourselves, we believe that the well-trained and capable healthcare workers, they should have one stick success, and not more than 2, as been stated in the best practice. So in the Asia Pacific region, it's usually the nurses and the doctors, usually young doctors. They will collect blood from patients in a bedside or in the outpatient department. CLSI is one of the recommended best practice guidelines. CLSI representing Clinical and Laboratory Standards Institute. In its section issued in 2017, is the GP 41. It has a very detailed description about the collection of diagnostic venous blood and specimens. And this evidence-based guideline provides very clear instruction that attributes and professionalism is one of the core leading us to an excellent performance and services throughout the analytical process. Next. So what's attribute then? What's attribute then? Attribute, by definition, is a kind of quality and characteristics given for a person or a group, working group. As short as in 30 seconds, the patient's impression and the perception will be established. The patient and the relative would simply judge by the way the phlebotomist image and all the performance. They also imply whether this staff is capable in knowledge and with expertise, and it will increase their confidence to be served by this working staff. Phlebotomist, and he or she will act as an important link between the lab and the hospital. And the hospital and the lab, the patient would easily infer at what level that this hospital and the lab can provide. Therefore, all the healthcare workers, especially whoever involved in the specimen collection, should be highly recommended to be adequately trained. For some facilities, because they have limited resources and also shortage of manpower, they would still allow the limitedly trained staff to collect blood. But as compared with some renowned countries, they highly recommend a formal training and even certification for phlebotomists. And we can find from these two segments of services, patient satisfaction is much higher in those organizations who will offer formal training. And sometimes the patient would even go to the private lab and then watch for, see whether the staff here would have their certificates being posted up on the wall, and they will feel very confident to be served here. The training surely would sharpen the skills and can help acquire attributes likely to ensure the best practice of the patient and the healthcare worker safety and also the sample integrity. Professionalism, unlike attributes, is not only image, but the style of our speaking, our behaving, and also the way how we offer solutions. So in an adequately trained team of staff, they may meet the workplace rules and expectations. They will also commit personal responsibilities, follow the institutional professional ethics. They can also develop the capability that the phlebotomist would start to believe them just in as short as 30 seconds. So friendly smile and assertive voice and also the professional look, professional performance would definitely help the patients to believe that all these angels, even with needles on their hands, but they are really angels working in the phlebotomy center. Here, a small boy, even he's a small boy, but sometimes he would ask the question just like an adult. Oh, what will happen later on? And we would ask, how would you do that? So you will see the nurse here has tried her best to explain everything. And for the adult, of course, he will expecting more from the working staff. So in an busy working environment, workflow efficiency is inevitable, but more haste, less speed. A good communication between the phlebotomy and the phlebotomist and the patient may facilitate the collection process. If the patient is relaxed and very cooperative, then the whole process would be relatively smooth and very efficient. As we know, if patients are in anxiety and they're afraid, the fight or flight stress response would initiate. Then their heart will be pumping and sweating, and they will breathe quickly. And the worst of all is the blood vessels inside the vein. The vessels would be constricted, which makes the phlebotomist meeting a challenging situation, cannot find the vein. What we always call it difficult draw. So why the clinical and operational audit is essential is because phlebotomy is a technical and professional procedure, and this is invasive procedure, which may or may not cause patient slightly pain, and also with the needle going in, they will feel a little bit threatened. So the clients actually, they will fully trust that doctors, nurses, and the phlebotomists are fully trained already. So, but how about some situation that the nurses or the phlebotomist is not working optimally satisfied? It will put at least, if the nurse is also shaky and very nervous, and they maybe their mind would be blank, they will forget some of the very important procedures. So that's why for most within hospitals and laboratories, they would rely on evidence-based best practice for blood collection, and also conduct regular trainings for their own staff. And other than that, they also perform some what we call mini audit to see whether the staff is really working at the best of the expectation. This kind of audits actually can also prepare the hospital for a future accreditation. What we mean by audit is not just a very formal one using a pile of documents to just put the text there. It is the superior officers. They have to spend time to walk around and observe the related surface gap. In some Asia Pacific countries, actually, BD has support the hospital to do the may I have 2 mini audit, which is organized sooner after the training, and then later on is surface audit they can provide, so as to ensure the training is effective. Let's check whether they are in clinically, whether there are some oh, sorry, I go back to the previous slide. Here, maybe, what do you think whether this 2 phlebotomist is doing right? And say, for example, for this one, the patient's elbow actually is not well supported. So during tube exchange or something like helping to release the tourniquet, then the hand is not well supported, and the outcome would be a blowing or a double puncture. And for these small kids, it looks fine because the phlebotomist is already using the tiny butterfly, but she is using a syringe. The syringe, she is using a strong force to draw the blood. As a clinical outcome, it will become an underdraw sample, hemolyte sample, or something else. So we would see this kind of situation quite often happen in the clinical side. So how about this two regarding the appearance? For this lady, looks good because she is well prepared and then she is quite confident. But for this lady, this phlebotomist, her dangling hair, I would doubt whether it would probably obstruct her eyesight in popping the vein or in identifying the vein. This lady, I think she is not in a good mood to serve, so that's why she is not prepared her tools well. The patient needs to have his hand to support the elbow, and her hair is somewhere is not tidily knocked. So all of this would instill the anxiety and worry about the patient. So the answer is very obvious. Having a positive and professional look is very, very important. Starting from dress up and groom neatly, when we greet the patient, and with our assertive voice and warm welcome, and then you can introduce yourself and state the series of service that you are going to offer. Then check the patient with the name and date of birth or the ID number so as to verify the patient identification. Is also very important in patient safety. After that, you prepare your head, your hand wash, and then assessing the patient where the proper vein should be chosen, and then attend the inquiries if they raise. Sooner or later, the blood collection process started. So it's a skillful operation with comfort, which means in a sense, we fully understand where's the location of the vein, and then we just go in with one stick and successful, without propping, without fishing, then the patient feel very comfortable. The whole process, just a little bit discomfort. And overall, give advice to the patient to match your collection process. And after that, if some laboratory tests require a subsequent follow-up, just like the all glucose tolerance test or some other kinds of tests, then just inform the patient and also ask them to do a proper hemostasis preparation by the digital fingers on the insertion site to ensure the blood is completely stopped. Above all these attributes, I think most of you would agree empathy with the patient is very important, which means that you are fully understand how patients feel, and you serve by heart. So a friendly smile, a soft voice, assertive and very informative inquiries and advice given. Then you also wear a very neat lab coat and perform the hand hygiene. Make sure that your hands is absolutely clean before you touching them, and put on a new glove every time in between patients or starting with a clean procedure. And all along, a knowledgeable explanation before the procedure start. All of these are very, very important to ensure patients' confidence on you. So without fear, without anxiety, actually the blood collection procedure may not be a very fattening and scaring experience. Right now, because healthcare professionals, they are one of the most fast-moving profession. They are either being promoted or shifting between departments. So how to ensure a standardized procedure and standardized services that they can offer to the patient? Obviously, proper training and even certificate, give them a certificate to certify that they have this kind of capability is one of the methods. In Asia Pacific, we would see a lot of hospitals. They would have the phlebotomy training, technician training. So once they got the certificate and then have someone to supervise them, 10 up to 15 patients collection, then the phlebotomist can be independently work and safely, and usually the patient won't have any complaint. So BD are also doing a lot of this kind of training, supporting hospitals and the laboratory associations in offering well-structured training programs in phlebotomy, and also the pre-analytical stage knowledge, such that they understand why they have to comply to this step-by-step best practice, rather than asking someone who seems to be very expert in the field to train them. For the most advanced level, the American Society for Clinical Pathology International, because before we need to go flying to US and then attend the training program and have the examination here. But now everyone can apply for this certification once your hospital is with connection with ASCP. So once they complete the training and the assessment, they can be getting the International Phlebotomy Technician, IPT qualification. Phlebotomists as one of the most important key stakeholders in the diagnostic process. So that's why they are the first one to be considered in joining this kind of high-level training. The high-level training usually cover basic knowledge, just such as human anatomy, laboratory medicine, healthcare worker safety, patient safety, infection control, and the common clinical situations which will lead to collection challenges. That's what we call the difficult draw. Because sometimes even the phlebotomists, they are very skillful, but it's the patient's condition, or sometimes they will have multiple lines, sometimes they have limited limbs or certain limitation that they cannot collect blood from either one of the limbs. Then all of this difficult draw that we need to learn. They also learn the institutional policies regarding sample collection and the international guidelines such as CLSI, what they expect from them, and they will in full compliance with those guidelines. Of course, the world is changing every 3 years. New informations and even infection control protocols, they will be keep changing and updated. So if the hospital can offer ongoing refresher training, that would be great. And we especially highlight it's not just a limited training, but a high level, a high standard training as recommended by CLSI and also ASCP, is because it can enhance the healthcare workers or the phlebotomists. They can develop their own professionalism and also the reputation of the hospital facilities. They also allow the phlebotomists to meet technical and clinical expertise, and that meets the organization expectation. The basic proficiency, as what we have mentioned before, besides the human anatomy and physiology, is the patient's identification, which is very, very important in the patient safety issue. We also understand the whole process of venous blood collection, how to assess the vein, how to proceed their venipuncture skills safely and efficiently. Regarding the knowledge, we have to know what is related to phlebotomy. And they are competently managing all the blood collection process, including how to choose the tubes, how to handle those tubes, and make sure that these samples would get the maximum specimen integrity. And they will also learn how to tackle all the difficult patients, difficult draw, just like those have infusion lines, or who are in urgent situation in ICU, that they have no more limbs, very limited sites for blood collection. Or the patients receiving blood transfusion, do we need to collect them immediately, or any other suitable time is recommended? So all of this are included in the difficult draw section. And the other is we don't try to give them the patient with one hematoma and nerve injury. In clinical side, we have visual that before the patient just yell, "Oh, help!" And we don't know why. It's because the needle already popping too deep. It touched the nerve and even the artery, which is giving the patient some kind of uncomfortable and nerve injury. And the most important of all is regarding the healthcare worker safety, because we are touching needles and also patients' blood. So any accidents happen within this process will be bringing a lot of health hazard to the healthcare workers. Standard precaution actually is a set of infection prevention measures so as to prevent the transmission of diseases and all possible pathogenic microorganisms to be spread from patient to patient. When the patient proceeds the invasive procedure, will have exposure in blood, in body fluid, and mucosal membrane, and some non-intact skin. Carefulness must be there so as not to let the risk of transmission having that pathogenic microorganism across the group with patient, with other healthcare workers. So that's why most of the hospitals would set up very detailed infection control measures. Standard precaution is one of them, which is the most basic. All the staff would attend the training and then get good mastery with these infection control guidelines. What is the cornerstone of infection control policies is, as every one of us is related to healthcare services, we will find hand hygiene is one of the most important steps. If everyone can do hand hygiene well, at least 50% of hospital infection can be eliminated. Use glove is another one, and personal protective equipment, just like wearing masks, eye shield, face shield, and the protective gown, all are very important PPE that we need to proceed. If patient is with some other kind of isolation needs, just like they are very highly infectious, then additional attention should be taken. It also involves with medical waste disposal and also the cleansing and how to disinfect the contaminated areas. All of this, the hospital would have a very detailed protocols for all the staff to follow. What if a needle stick injury and blood and body fluid exposure has been happened? We need to report immediately within 2 hours, so that the earliest we report and the earliest we can treat the staff and trace the source of origin, where those pathogenic sources comes from, and whether the contaminated straps comes from. We can have a better management. Here it comes with a very important concept of chain of infection. Chain of infection involves where the bacteria comes from. So in the healthcare settings, all moving person, just like doctor, nurses, phlebotomists, all the working staff in the ward, they will carry, no matter as non-pathogenic or pathogenic microorganisms within their hands, their gloves, like that. And the phlebotomist tray is just like the tourniquet or the tubes or some other tools. If it is not regularly cleaned and updated, and this would become one of the most common source of pathogen source. And sometimes the computer keyboard and also the pens, the patient's records board and those documents, all of this, the patient's table tray, all of this would have highly possible that the pathogen source would be in place. But how this become transmitted from the person to the patient is through the direct contact, just like our skin. Unfortunately, without proper gloving, the blood drop into our hand, or sometimes it's the blood spraying up and then goes into our eyes. And airborne is one of the most serious one, because just like the Ebola virus or some airborne infections, just with our respiration, the bacteria, the microorganisms would transmit from patient to patient. Right now, the COVID-19 is a certain kind of droplet transmission. So that's why we need to keep in a social distance, and also we need to wear masks to protect ourselves. And the final one is the touch contamination, just like when after we disinfect the patient's skin, and then we forget where the vein exactly locate, and then we use our finger to touch the connection, the insertion site. All of this kind of carelessness would put the patient at risk. So who would be the patient at risk? Is the patient suffering from chronically ill, or they are already immunocompromised, or just like a cancer patient, or receiving radiotherapy and quite sick at the last stage of cancer. And also some patients who are on long-term antibiotic. So all of this would be putting the patient at risk. So how to break the chain of infection? Just have hand hygiene is one of the method we recommend, and we need to do all those PPE. We have come across all those remind steps in the previous page. For the needle stick injury, what's the most common bacteria or virus we would be in contact? Is this one is the MRSA, the vancomycin-resistant enterococci, and hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, all of this. For the bloodborne pathogens, if we get the exposure, then the risk would be quite high, especially for the phlebotomists and the healthcare workers. And other than the Hep B, Hep C, and HIV, there are more than 30 pathogen microorganisms listed here. And sometimes, and some cancers even exposed after the needle stick injury. So let's understand what's the major risks of a needle stick injury. In some clinical trial, it says that at least 22% happen during collection, whereas at least double, 40 needle stick injury would be associated with phlebotomy sooner or later, sooner after and before the needle is disposed. So this session, we must be putting very high care on that. Here is a lot of supporting data talking about using a safety engineered device can effectively and efficiently reduce the needle stick injury. So here is the safety engineered device recommended, just the single-use holder, the needles. Just use one click to activate all the locks after the collection, and the whole process is collected in a closed blood collection system. There's no blood exposure during collection. So let's sum up whether the attributes and our skills, our performance, our professionalism really helps the total specimen management in for phlebotomies. Of course, yes, because the staff image and professionalism and patient outcome, the workflow efficiency, and also the professional positions that we establish. So that's why in most of the clinical settings, we would use a dialogue to ensure good communication is there, and we'll cover all the CLSI recommended best practice step by step from the preparation down to collection, down to the post-collection advice is all there, and the patient would feel very confident and satisfied with a smile, very well-efficient staff services. So how about serving for by this artificial phlebotomist in future? I don't think that you or myself would be very confident at this moment. But anyway, hope every one of us who will be responsible for blood collection would pay focus on the attributes and professionalism. Yeah, because that is our job, and that's our will and vision and mission to serve patient better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mac, for that very detailed presentation. I would like to now open the floor to any questions that you might have for the topic today. And while we wait for more questions to come in, I'd like to go ahead and ask some of the questions that have come in throughout the presentation. So the first question is, how do you identify staff with the correct attributes when you are recruiting? I think this is a really interesting question.
When you are recruiting, I think it depends on the training offered by the organization, rather than let the staff with this kind of attributes at the very beginning when they apply for this job. Because even though the staff comes from one hospital, they have their own training. But when it comes to your organization, maybe the organizational culture and the policy will be slightly different. So it's the staff orientation that can provide proper training for the staff, especially the direct contact for the blood collection procedure. It depends on how well and how well structured is the training that you integrated into your hospital. Yeah, we hope that the CLSI guideline is one of the best practice we commonly adopt in the training, and of course the hospital have their own one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Constance. Okay, so the next question is, what is your recommendation for collecting blood samples for children who have a high fear of needles?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good, very good question. I would like to introduce this slide.